First, Lieutenant Joseph Kreka feels the universe explode. The explosion is ear-splitting and seems to go on and on. He'll later recall, "Our airplane flies out of the fireball with orange flames and thick black smoke trailing from the wings, fuselage and tail. In the front seat, pilot Lieutenant Gordon Scotty Wilson keys his radio, voice tight with urgency. Get out." Before the word finishes echoing, there's a boom. The canopy tears away into the slipstream. Wilson ejects. Kreka freezes for a microsecond, watching his pilot's seat blast skyward at 15,000 feet above North Vietnam. Then his world goes wide as his own ejection sequence fires. F-4C Phantom 64-0755 tumbles toward Earth. Another statistic in a war that's destroying American assumptions about air power faster than it's destroying aircraft. Wilson never makes it to the ground alive, likely killed by a second SA-2 surface-to-air missile while descending. Kreka lands in a rice paddy, immediately surrounded by hundreds of villagers. "Of all those doing their best to inflict bodily harm on me," he remembers, "the old women were the worst." Within hours, Kreka sits in a room at Hoalo Prison, the Hanoi Hilton facing his interrogator. The Vietnamese officer leans forward, voice dripping menace. "Kreka, you will die in Vietnam." He won't die, but he'll spend the next 6 years and 3 months in hell, one of 761 F-4 Phantoms lost, in a war that will shatter every assumption American planners made about modern air combat. The McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II roars into service in 1960 as the ultimate expression of American technological supremacy. It's a brute 38,000 pounds of thrust from twin General Electric J-79 engines propelling 60,000 pounds of aircraft and ordnance to Mach 2.23. At 40,000 feet, nothing can touch it. Nothing in the Soviet arsenal, the planners believe, can challenge it. The specifications read like a fighter pilot's fever dream. Maximum speed of 1,472 miles per hour, combat radius of 422 nautical miles, service ceiling of 60,000 feet. 9 hardpoints can carry 18,650 pounds of weapons, a staggering payload that transforms this fleet defense interceptor into a multi-role beast capable of air superiority, ground attack, reconnaissance, and suppression of enemy air defenses. But the Phantom's design philosophy reveals the hubris at the heart of American air combat doctrine in the early 1960s. The F-4 has no internal gun. None. Zero. The designers, operating under Pentagon guidance, believe the era of dogfighting ended with World War II. Air combat in the missile age, they're certain, will occur at beyond visual range. F-4S launching radar-guided aim, 7 Sparrows at Soviet bombers from 20 miles away, destroying them before anyone sees anything but radar blips. Fighters didn't need guns if they could make a kill at the long ranges at which missiles were effective. Goes the thinking. It's a philosophy that will cost American lives. The Phantom's radar, the AN/APQ series, represents the cutting edge of 1950s technology. Coupled with the AIM-7 Sparrow semi-active radar homing missile, it should make the F-4 an unstoppable killing machine. 4 Sparrows nestle in semi-recessed mounts along the fuselage. 4 AIM-9 Sidewinder infrared missiles hang from wing pylons. Development testing predicts 80 to 90% kill probability for the Sparrow. The future looks bright. American confidence isn't entirely unfounded. In Korea, F-86 Sabres achieved approximately 10-to-1 kill ratios against North Korean and Chinese MiGs. American pilots, many of them World War II veterans, demonstrated clear superiority in training, tactics, and technology. The lesson seemed clear. American air power, properly applied, achieves inevitable dominance. By 1965, as the first F-4S deployed to Southeast Asia, this confidence has curdled into dangerous overconfidence. The Air Force has largely abandoned air combat maneuvering training in favor of interceptor tactics focused on the nuclear mission. Safety concerns about high-speed ACM reduced dogfighting practice to near zero. As Air Force Chief of Staff General Merrill McPeak will later write, the USAF was woefully unprepared for what awaited in Vietnam. But how could tiny North Vietnam, a nation without an air force to speak of, Without advanced radar networks, without the industrial base to sustain modern warfare, possibly challenge American technological supremacy, the very question seems absurd. The F-4 Phantom enters combat on August 5, 1964, during Operation Pierce Arrow retaliatory strikes following the Gulf of Tonkin incident. F-4Bs from USS Constellation fly the first combat sorties. For months, opposition remains light. The North Vietnamese are still building their defenses, learning, preparing. The first MiG engagements come in early 1965. On April 9, 1965, Lieutenant Junior Grade Terrence Murphy and Ensign Ronald Fegan achieved the first Phantom air-to-air victory, shooting down a Chinese MiG-17. Minutes later, their F-4B becomes the first Phantom lost to enemy action, possibly to friendly fire from their own wingman's AIM-7 Sparrow. Though controversy persists whether MiG guns delivered the fatal blow, it's an ominous beginning. Victory and loss in the same engagement. The first hint that air combat over Vietnam will prove far more dangerous and complex than anyone imagined. On June 20, 1965, the Air Force loses its first F-4C to enemy action shot down over Ta Chan in northwestern North Vietnam. The crew ejects, captured, or killed. Another data point, another assumption challenge. Then, on July 24, 1965, everything changes. An F-4C from the 47th Tactical Fighter Squadron becomes the first American aircraft destroyed by a Soviet SA-2 Guideline surface-to-air missile. The SAT, a 3-5-foot-long telephone pole, traveling at Mach 3.5 streaks into the sky, trailing white smoke, tracks its target with semi-active radar homing, and detonates its 295-pound warhead in a lethal cloud of 8,000 fragments. American air crews suddenly realize they're facing not just MiG fighters, but an integrated air defense network, the likes of which no one has encountered since the final days of Nazi Germany. While American planners assume technological superiority guarantees victory, North Vietnam is building the most formidable integrated air defense system in history. The numbers alone stagger belief. By 1968, North Vietnam will deploy 8,050 anti-aircraft guns, 400 radar systems, 150 MiG fighters, and 40 SA-2 surface-to-air missile sites, protecting a country roughly the size of New Mexico. The Vietnamese People's Air Force begins with nothing. In 1960, they send their first 52 pilots to the Soviet Union and China for training. The program is brutal, fewer than 1 in 5 trainees complete basic instruction. But those who survive emerge as skilled, disciplined pilots who've spent 4 years learning to fly, progressing from Yak-18 trainers to MiG-15 seconds, to frontline MiG-17 seconds and MiG-21 seconds. Nguyen Van Cok, who will become North Vietnam's top ace, is among them. Born in December 1942, his father and uncle killed by the French when he was 5, Van Cok enlists in 1961. He spends 4 years in Soviet training facilities at Bataisk and Krasnodar. Of 120 trainees in his batch, only 7 graduate as MiG-17 pilots. He's selected as one of 13 elite pilots for MiG-21 conversion training, the tip of the spear. The North Vietnamese study air combat history obsessively. We learned a lot of lessons and studied many famous dogfights from World War II between the Soviets and the Germans, and also the dogfights in the Pacific, recalls ace pilot Nguyen Van Bay. They identify a simple truth. Whoever fires first wins. The most important thing was to discover the enemy first, to gain higher speed and height, to get better position. But it's not just the MiG pilots who will challenge American dominance. The SATWO surface-to-air missile system, supplied by the Soviet Union, arrives in 1965. The Soviets deliver 95 S-75 systems and 7,658 missiles over the course of the war. Initial deployment involves approximately 1,000 Soviet advisors, including crews who will actually fire missiles in combat, though this fact won't be acknowledged for decades. The North Vietnamese organize their air defenses with ruthless efficiency. A unified air defense Air Force Service Command coordinates fighters, missiles, radar, and anti-aircraft artillery under single command, unlike the fragmented American command structure spread across the Air Force, Navy, and political leadership in Washington. This integration will prove decisive. Perhaps most importantly, the North Vietnamese deploy a sophisticated signals intelligence network employing 5,000 personnel through traffic analysis of American radio communications, logistics, chatter, ordnance loading procedures, weather flights. Refueling operations, Vietnamese intelligence can predict 30 to 45 minutes in advance the timing and targets of 80 to 90% of Rolling Thunder missions. American predictability becomes a lethal vulnerability. By late 1965, the trap is set. American aircraft following predictable routes at predictable times to targets dictated by political leadership in Washington fly into an integrated defense network that can vector MiGs to intercept positions, activate SAM radars at optimal moments, and concentrate thousands of anti-aircraft guns along known approach corridors. The North Vietnamese deploy their forces in a three-layer cake defense. SA-2 missiles force American aircraft below 10,000 feet. Heavy anti-aircraft artillery, 57mm, 85mm, and 100mm guns engages between 8,000 and 45,000 feet. Light AAA saturates low-altitude areas, forcing aircraft higher into the SAM and heavy AAA zones. There's no safe altitude. There's no safe approach route. And when Americans maneuver to evade one threat, they become vulnerable to another. Dodge a SAM, and you disrupt your formation, making MiG attacks easier. Combat MiGs, and you jettison your bombs, aborting the mission. Fly low to avoid SAMs, and you enter the kill zone of thousands of anti-aircraft guns that will account for 65 to 75% of all F-4 combat losses. The stage is set for a disaster that will shake American confidence to its core. On March 2, 1965, Operation Rolling Thunder begins a graduated bombing campaign designed to compel North Vietnam to abandon support for the Viet Cong insurgency in South Vietnam. It will continue with periodic halts until November 1968, becoming the longest continuous bombing campaign in American history. It will also become one of the most frustrating and costly. F-4 Phantoms arrive in theater in growing numbers. The 8th Tactical Fighter Wing at Ubon Royal Thai Air Force Base in Thailand, the 366th TFW, the 432nd Tactical Reconnaissance Wing Phantom units proliferate. Navy F-4Bs fly from carriers in the Gulf of Tonkin. The Marines deploy F-4S to Da Nang. By 1967, over 200 F-4S operate from Thailand alone. The losses begin almost immediately. Between 1965 and 1968, kill ratios plummet to 2:3 to 1 ratio, with periods approaching 1:1 ratio, the worst air combat performance in American history. The North Vietnamese Air Force, never fielding more than 75 operational aircraft at any given time, shoots down 67 USAF aircraft, while losing 137. That's only 2:1 kill ratio, a far cry from the 10:1 kill ratios of Korea. The statistics tell a grim story. Of the 193 USAF F-4S lost over North Vietnam through 1968, 130 fall to anti-aircraft artillery, 67%, 30 to SAMs, 16%, and 33 to MiGs, 17%. The AAA threat is ubiquitous and deadly, thousands of guns putting up walls of explosive steel that shred aircraft with horrifying efficiency. The SA-2 surface-to-air missile system forces a revolution in American tactics. After the first F-4 falls to an SATWO on July 24, 1965, American planners scramble to develop countermeasures. The result is one of the most dangerous missions in aviation history. Wild Weasel. "You gotta be shitting me," declares electronic warfare officer Jack Donovan when first briefed on the Wild Weasel concept in August 1965. The motto sticks: YGBSM. The mission is simple in concept, suicidal in execution. Fly ahead of strike packages. Intentionally draw SAM fire to locate sites. Then destroy them with anti-radiation missiles before the SAMs kill you. The first Wild Weasel aircraft are F-100F Super Sabres, hastily fitted with APR-35 radar receivers borrowed from CIA-2 spy planes and primitive SAM launch detectors. they proved too slow to escort F-105 Thunder Chief strike packages. By May 1966, the Air Force transitions to F-105 FS/G Thunder Chiefs carrying AGM-45 Shrike anti-radiation missiles. The losses are catastrophic. Of the first 7 F-105F Wild Weasels deployed to Takli Air Base in July 1966, all 7 are shot down within 6 weeks. The crews who survive describe flying 25 miles ahead of strike forces, watching SAM radars activate, seeing the white smoke trails as missiles launch, then desperately maneuvering while trying to fire strikes that often lose guidance when the Vietnamese shut down radars. But Wild Weasel crews persist because the alternative, letting SAM slaughter strike packages, is unacceptable. By 1972, F-4C and F-4G Phantoms will take over the mission, armed with improved AGM-78 standard anti-radiation missiles. The Wild Weasel model becomes first in, last out, and is earned with blood. The North Vietnamese quickly prove they're not passive targets. After initial SA-2 successes in mid-1965, effectiveness plummets as Americans introduce electronic countermeasures. By spring 1967, the QRC-160 jamming pod has rendered SATWOs virtually impotent against Air Force strike packages. The Vietnamese fire 107 missiles for every kill and unsustainable exchange rate. But in October 1967, Vietnamese SA-2 crews unveil a devastating innovation, the track-on-jam technique. Instead of trying to burn through American jamming, they reverse the equation using the jamming signal itself as a homing beacon. The three-point method requires extraordinary skill, with separate operators manually tracking bearing and elevation of the jamming source. But once perfected, it's lethally effective. On November 18–19, 1967, newly trained SA-2 crews demonstrate the technique's power, shooting down 8 to 10 American aircraft in coordinated attacks. The Vietnamese have turned American technology against itself. They adapt in other ways too. SA-2 sites become highly mobile, capable of packing up and moving in 4 hours. Dummy sites with bamboo missiles defended by real AAA deceive attackers. Vietnamese crews practice radar discipline, turning systems on and off to avoid anti-radiation missiles, while calculating target positions during dark periods. Is guerrilla warfare applied to high-technology air defense. Colonel Robin Oates, commander of the 8th Tactical Fighter Wing at Ubon, is a warrior poet. A World War II ace with 12 kills, he describes his F-4 in almost sensual terms. Like a brooding hen, she squats, half asleep, above her egg clutch. Her tail feathers droop, beak juts forward belligerently, back looks humped, and wingtips splay upward. Sitting there, she's not a thing of beauty, far from it, but she is my F-4. By late 1966, Oates has identified a critical vulnerability in North Vietnamese tactics. Their MiG-21 pilots consistently attack F-105 Thunder Chief strike packages. Drawn by the distinctive electronic signature of QRC-160 jamming pods, the MiGs ignore F-4 escorts positioned 5 minutes behind the bombers too far away to help. Oates conceives a trap of breathtaking audacity, Operation Bolo. On January 2, 1967, at 3 p.m. local time, F-4 Phantoms disguised as F-105s fly north from Thailand. They match the Thunder Chief's routes, altitudes, speeds, radio calls, and crucially carry QRC-160 jamming pods identical to those used by bomb-laden F-105s. The North Vietnamese take the bait. As Oates' formation approaches Phu Quien airfield, MiG-21 seconds scramble for what they believe will be easy kills against bomb-heavy Thunder Chiefs. Instead, they encounter F-4s configured for air superiority, pilots itching for a fight. The massacre lasts 12 minutes. In thick clouds over Hanoi, 7 MiG-21 seconds fall to aim, 7 Sparrows and AIM-9 Sidewinders. Oates himself destroys one, vectoring his F-4 in a rolling maneuver that puts his Sidewinder seeker dead on the MiG's tailpipe. He watches a missile tear off the MiG's right wing in a spray of metal and fuel. 7 MiG-21 seconds destroyed, 0 American losses. The Vietnamese later confirmed 5 MiG-21 PFLs lost nearly half their operational MiG-21 fleet destroyed in a single engagement. The VPAF grounds its MiG 21 seconds for 4 months to retrain and rethink tactics. There are MiGs about, O's will later write, and my F-4 becomes a brutal beast, slamming this way, then that snarling with rage, turning, rolling, diving, hurtling skyward like an arrow, plunging down with savage force. Operation Bolo represents everything American air power should be: intelligent, aggressive, adaptive, devastating. But it's an exception in a war increasingly defined by frustration and loss. The F-4's primary weapon, the AIM-7 Sparrow radar-guided missile, proves catastrophically unreliable. Development testing predicted 80 to 90% kill probability. Operational testing suggested 50-60% success rates. In combat, reality delivers a brutal corrective. During Rolling Thunder 1965 to 1968, American forces fired 612 AIM-7D/E/E2 missiles. They achieved 56 kills, a mere 9.2% kill probability. Only 2 kills occurred beyond visual range, negating the entire beyond visual range doctrine that justified building the F-4 without a gun. The reasons are multiple and damning. Tropical humidity causes electronic failures. Missiles trucked over rough roads suffer vibration damage. Repeated uploading and downloading for different mission configurations introduces faults. Maintenance facilities in theater lack proper calibration equipment. The Sparrow's semi-active radar homing requires continuous radar illumination from the launching aircraft loose lock on a maneuvering MiG, and the missile goes ballistic. But the real problem is tactical misuse driven by restrictive rules of engagement. Pilots must visually identify targets before firing, negating the Sparrow's range advantage. They close to visual range, identify the MiG, then fall back to firing parameters. This warning gives MiG pilots time to maneuver aggressively, and the Sparrow proves nearly useless against hard-turning targets. The AIM-9 Sidewinder infrared missile performs marginally better at 15-18% kill probability, but that's still catastrophically below expectations. Early AIM-9B models have narrow 4-degree fields of view and can only attack from directly behind. They are easily decoyed by flares, distracted by sun reflections, and prone to losing lock at critical moments. The Air Force briefly experiments with the AIM-4 Falcon missile in 1967 to 1968. It's a spectacular failure. Designed for bomber interception, the Falcon lacks a proximity fuse. Most missiles pass within 20 feet of targets without exploding. One pilot recalls the Falcon as much too sensitive to any jarring or even stray voltage misalignment. The Air Force abandons it under the Rivet Haste program in early 1968. Without guns and with unreliable missiles, F-4 crews find themselves in a nightmare scenario, closing to knife fighting range with highly maneuverable MiG-17 seconds while carrying no weapon effective at close range. Pilots report being too close to fire Sparrows or Sidewinders multiple times, watching MiGs fill their windscreens while their weapons remain useless. The Air Force hastily introduces gun pods Su-16/A and Su-23/A external containers, mounting M61 Vulcan 20mm cannons on the centerline station. They prove nearly as useless as no gun at all. The pods aren't synchronized with gun sights, creating accuracy problems. They require 400 plus mph airspeed for optimal firing rate due to ram air turbines. Most damaging, the pylon deflects when firing, causing rounds to spray wildly. In 1967, McDonnell Douglas begins production of the F-4E variant with an internal M61 Vulcan 20mm cannon and 639 rounds. The first gun-equipped Phantoms reached combat in November 1968. On June 2, 1972, Major Phil Handley achieved the first and only confirmed supersonic gun kill in history, destroying a MiG-19 at Mach 1.2 with cannon fire. The F-4E proves immensely popular with crews, but it arrives years too late for the hundreds of pilots who face MiGs with only temperamental missiles. The Vietnamese MiG pilots prove far more skilled and tactically sophisticated than American planners anticipated. Under direction from ground control intercept stations, they fight a brilliant guerrilla air war, striking only when conditions favor them, evading when outmatched, preserving their force while inflicting maximum damage. Nguyen Van Bay, flying the subsonic MiG-17, develops tactics that exploit the F-4's weaknesses with surgical precision. We had to force them to turn, he explains. When they turned, the speed did not matter. We could change the center of the circle and cut the diameter to chase the enemy. The MiG-17's superb turn rate and lower wing loading allow it to outmaneuver F-4s in sustained turns, getting inside the Phantom's radius and bring guns to bear. Bay identifies the F-4's critical vulnerability. Their weakness is to fly from far away. All of them feel thousands of eyes looking up at them and thousands of guns shooting them from the ground. Their eyes cannot concentrate 100% on our planes. Therefore, we usually discover them before they discover us. He's right. The F-4's J-79 engines produce heavy black smoke at cruise settings, making the large aircraft visible from extraordinary distances. Meanwhile, the small, clean MiG-17 and MiG-21 remain difficult to spot until dangerously close. The Vietnamese consistently win the first sight advantage, and in air combat, seeing first means surviving. On April 30, 1967, Nguyen Van Cok scores his first kill, an F-105D Thunder Chief. He's flying as wingman to Nguyen, Ngoc Do. I noticed F-105S flying beneath us at an altitude of 2,500 meters at 30 degrees to our course. Van Cok recalls. My leader also saw the Thunder Chiefs. We both increased our speed and dived at the US fighter bombers, which were unaware of our presence. My leader shot down the second airplane. I also opened fire, downing another Thunder Chief. The attack from the sun, the perfect positioning, the disciplined fire control, these aren't lucky pilots. These are professionals executing well-rehearsed tactics based on sophisticated understanding of their enemy's weaknesses. Vietnamese pilots developed the double attack tactic with devastating effect. MiG-17 seconds perform head-on passes against F-4 formations, forcing the Phantoms to maneuver and break lock with their radar. Meanwhile, MiG-21 seconds attack from behind with K-13 atoll infrared missiles. On August 23, 1967, this tactic destroys 3 F-4Ds in a single engagement. By November 18, 1967, Van Cok achieves his 5th kill, becoming an ace. He'll eventually score 9 confirmed victories, 7 aircraft, 2 drones, making him the top ace of the war. 13 of 16 total Vietnamese aces fly MiG-21 seconds. These aren't accidents, they're the result of rigorous training, tactical discipline, and ruthless focus on exploiting American vulnerabilities. For F-4 crews shot down over North Vietnam, the war is just beginning. Commander Everett Alvarez Jr., shot down on August 5, 1964, spends 8 years, 7 months, and 6 days in captivity, 3,113 days that test the limits of human endurance. He's the first American pilot shot down in the war, a distinction that brings no privileges. I told them as little as I could, Alvarez recalls. They quizzed me for 6 weeks to learn everything they could. When cooperation doesn't come, punishment does. Things were starting to turn rough by then. After the Hanoi March, things really got rough. They would punish us. They would torture us for propaganda. About 3 years of constant punishment, torture, different things. Starvation becomes another weapon. Alvarez enters captivity at 157 pounds. By the winter of 1968, he weighs 125 pounds, skin stretched over bone. Every day a battle to survive. The Vietnamese deliberately reduced rations during negotiations, using starvation as leverage. The POWs developed the tap code, a 5x5 matrix, allowing communication through prison walls. It became our lifeline, Alvarez remembers. It fueled our morale and stiffened our backbone. Above all, it kept us informed. To be forewarned was to be forearmed. Joe Crecca, shot down November 22, 1966, endured 6 years and 3 months of captivity. His interrogators promise, Crecca, you will die in Vietnam, seems prophetic during torture sessions. In a matter of minutes, I was bound with ropes. My arms were tied behind my back, with the elbows laced tightly together. I lost all feeling in my arms very rapidly. Manacles were locked onto my wrists as well. The pain was unbearable, except that I had to bear it whether I wanted to or not. The torture escalates. Then, I was pushed face down to the floor and blindfolded. I could feel them loop a rope around my neck, then attach the rope to my wrists, and again, in similar fashion, to my ankles. Suddenly, I was lifted from the floor. I was dropped onto the floor. The process of lifting the American air pirate and dropping him face first onto the floor went on for over an hour. Kreka survives through faith, stubbornness, and the tap-coat connection with fellow POWs. When released in 1973, he meets President Nixon at a White House reception. "Thank you, Mr. President, for bringing us home with honor," Kreka says. "And I'm really sorry about that F-4, but I promise if you just give me another one, I'll take much better care of it." Nixon laughs and replies, "I want you in one." Kreka does fly F-4S, again, a testament to resilience beyond measure. By 1968, the Air Force and Navy recognized the Vietnam Air War has exposed catastrophic deficiencies in training, tactics, and technology. The ALT report, commissioned by the Navy to investigate poor missile and air combat performance, delivers a scathing assessment. Inadequate training in air combat maneuvering, unreliable weapons, and tactics unsuited to the combat environment. On March 3, 1969, Lieutenant Commander Dan Patterson and 8 junior officers established the Navy Fighter Weapons School at NAS Miramar, California. The program, later immortalized as Top Gun, stars in an abandoned trailer with scrounged furniture. But its impact will be transformative. Top Gun focuses relentlessly on dissimilar air combat training, teaching Navy F-4 crews to fight against A-4 Skyhawks and T-38 Talons, mimicking MiG-17 and MiG-21 tactics. The curriculum emphasizes the fundamentals American pilots have forgotten: energy management, nose-tail separation, defensive maneuvering, and the psychology of close-range air combat. The results speak for themselves. Before 1970, Navy F-4 crews achieved kill ratios of 3:7-1 ratio. After Top Gun graduates return to the fleet, that ratio climbs to 13:1 during the 1972 Linebacker operations, a 3.5-fold improvement, driven entirely by better training. The Air Force follows suit. Project Red Baron II identifies a critical statistic: pilot survivability increases dramatically after the first 10 combat missions. The solution is obvious: provide those 10 missions in a safe training environment. On November 29, 1975, the first Red Flag exercise launches at Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada. Replicating the integrated air defense environment crews will face in combat. But these innovations come too late for the hundreds of F-4S and their crews lost during Rolling Thunder. When Operation Linebacker I begins on the 10th of May 1972, the air war over North Vietnam reaches peak intensity. The North Vietnamese have used the 4-year bombing pause, November 1968 to 1972, to rebuild and strengthen their defenses. They now field 206 MiG fighters, the highest number of the war, plus over 200 SA-2 launchers and 8,000 anti-aircraft guns. It's the most heavily defended airspace in history. The American response demonstrates how far tactics and training have evolved. Strike packages now integrate fighters, EB-66 jammers, wild weasels, chaff dispensers, rescue forces, and tankers in coordinated operations. F-4ES with internal guns give crews a reliable close-range weapon. Improved AIM-7E2 dogfight Sparrow missiles prove far more effective than earlier versions. New ECM pods like the AN/ALQ-131 provide sophisticated electronic protection. Most importantly, American pilots now receive realistic adversary training before deploying. They know how to fight MiGs. They understand energy management, offensive and defensive maneuvering, and weapons employment. They're no longer learning to dogfight over Hanoi. They arrive trained and ready. The day Linebacker I begins the 10th of May 1972 becomes the bloodiest day of air combat in the war. Vietnamese sources claim 90 American aircraft shot down in 201 air battles. U.S. sources acknowledge significant losses but dispute the number. What's undeniable is the intensity and lethality of the engagement. For Major Robert Lodge and Captain Roger Locker, flying F-4D Oyster 1 that morning, May 10 begins with triumph and ends in tragedy. At 9:48 a.m., Lodge fires 2 AIM, 7 Sparrows at the MiG-21. The second missile destroys the MiG, his third kill. But in the chaos of combat, 4 Shenyang J6 seconds, Chinese-built MiG-19 seconds, maneuver undetected behind oyster flight. Vietnamese pilot Nguyen Man Tung hits Lodge's F-4D with 30mm cannon fire from below. The right engine explodes, fire enters the cockpit, and the aircraft pitches toward a flat spin at 8,000 feet. Well, why don't you eject then? Lodge asks Lodger over the intercom. But Lodge himself refuses. He's told his squadron he possesses too much classified knowledge to allow capture. He rides the F-4 into the ground, killed on impact. Locker ejects, successfully beginning an ordeal that will become legend. Captain Roger Locker lands 60 miles northwest of Hanoi, 5 miles from Yen Bai Air Base. 2 J6 seconds buzz him as he descends, but miraculously, no one sees his parachute. He lands in dense vegetation on a mountainside and immediately goes to ground. For 23 days, Locker evades thousands of searchers. On day 3, a search party of farmers passes within 30 feet. On day 10, they're within 5 feet, so close a water buffalo nearly steps on him. He survives on berries and stream water, losing 40 pounds. He moves only at night, covering just 12 miles in more than 3 weeks. On the 1st of June 1972, day 22, Locker risks transmitting on his survival radio. Any U.S. aircraft, if you read Oyster 1 Bravo, come up on guard. Overhead, his squadron mate, Captain Steve Ritchie, hears the call. You bet, Ritchie responds. Locker's voice, calm despite the circumstances, comes back. Guys, I've been down here a long time. Any chance of picking me up? The next day, General John W. Vogt Jr., 7th Air Force Commander, makes a decision that defines American values. Shut down the war. He cancels the entire Hanoi strike mission scheduled for June 2, dedicating 119 aircraft, 2 HH-53C helicopters, F-4 escorts, EB-66 jammers, Auenhower Sky Raiders, F-105G Wild Weasels, KC-135 tankers, and bombers to one mission: rescue Roger Locker. Captain Dale Stovall pilots the HH-53 into a steep mountain slope, rotors perilously close to trees under enemy fire. He hovers while the jungle penetrator lowers. Locher climbs aboard. The force fights its way out with 0 losses. It's the deepest successful rescue in North Vietnam during the entire war, 23 days, 60 miles from Hanoi. Steve Ritchie will later reflect on what the rescue represents. We come to fully understand the effort to which we will go, the resources we will commit, the risks that we will take to rescue one crew member, one American, one ally. Isn't it a very powerful statement about what kind of people we are? The 10th of May 1972 also produces the first American aces of the war, Lieutenant Randy Duke Cunningham and Lieutenant Junior Grade William Willie Irish Driscoll, flying F-4J Showtime 100 from USS Constellation, engaged in multiple dogfights during a flag suppression mission to Haiduang. Their first 2 MiG-17 kills come in the initial melee as 35 American aircraft faced 22 North Vietnamese MiGs. Then comes their legendary encounter, later attributed to the mythical Colonel Toom, a North Vietnamese ace who never existed, but makes for good storytelling. The MiG-17 meets them head-on. Both aircraft enter vertical climbs. The MiG impossibly stays with the more powerful Phantom, matching its climb rate in a display of either superb piloting or aerodynamic impossibility, depending on who tells the story. Cunningham cuts throttles and deploys speed brakes, forcing the MiG to overshoot. As he pitches over the top, Cunningham fires his last AIM-9 Sidewinder. The missile tracks true. The MiG-17 disintegrates, killing the pilot. Cunningham and Driscoll become the first flying aces of the Vietnam War, the first team aces, the first all-missile aces, and the only Navy aces of the war. 5 kills in 4 months. January 19, May 8, and 3 on May 10. Their triumph lasts minutes. On the egress, an SATW missile slams into their F-4J. Cunningham struggles to control the damaged aircraft, but hydraulic failure makes conventional control impossible. He flies using only rudder and afterburner, the aircraft on fire and spiraling. Both crew eject over the Gulf of Tonkin. A Navy destroyer rescues them. They survive to tell the tale. Captain Steve Ritchie becomes the Air Force's only pilot ace, as opposed to WSO aces. On the 28th of August, 1972, flying F-4 D-66 to 7,463, the same aircraft in which he scored his first kill. Ritchie and his WSO, Captain Chuck D. Bellevue, destroy a MiG-21 north of Hanoi. It's a textbook engagement, head-on approach, steep climbing turn, shot from extreme altitude with an AIM-7 Sparrow. The MiG pilot never sees them. Ritchie's crew chief, Sergeant Reggie Taylor, is present for both the first and fifth kills. He was more excited than I was, Ritchie recalls. Crew chiefs paint victory stars on aircraft they maintain F-4 D-66 to 7,463, wears 5 stars when it's retired to the Air Force Academy. Captain Charles B. Chuck de Bellevue becomes the highest-scoring American ace of the war with 6 victories for flying with Ritchie. 2 more on the 9th of September 1972 with Captain John A. Madden Jr. The September 9 engagement sees de Bellevue destroy 2 MiG-19 seconds near Fukien, both on final approach with gear and flaps down perfect targets. The fight took 1 minute and 29 seconds. He'll later say, "I take longer to tell the story." Captain Jeffrey Fang Fanstein becomes the last American to achieve ace status on the 13th of October 1972, destroying a MiG-21 northeast of Hanoi while protecting a strike on the Paul Doomer Bridge. He earns the Air Force Cross for extraordinary heroism and complete disregard for personal safety when he destroys a MiG attacking his wingman while another MiG attacks him. Feinstein remains the last member of the U.S. Air Force to achieve ace status. That distinction stands to this day over 50 years later. Operation Linebacker II, the Christmas bombings, begins the 18th of December 1972. Over 11 days, the United States drops more than 20,000 tons of ordnance on North Vietnam, flying 729 B-52 sorties from a fleet of 207 aircraft, nearly half of Strategic Air Command's bomber force. The North Vietnamese fire 1,242 SA-2 missiles, creating what aircrews describe as a forest of telephone poles, filling the sky with white smoke trails. At one point, more than 40 SAMs are airborne simultaneously. The Americans lose 15 B-52 seconds officially acknowledged, possibly 22 to 27 total, 3 F-4, S, and multiple other aircraft. The B-52 losses shock planners who believed the high-altitude bombers nearly invulnerable, but the campaign breaks North Vietnamese air defenses. SA-2 missile stocks deplete. Bomber tactics evolve to include more randomness and tactical flexibility. By the final days, losses drop dramatically. North Vietnam's war-making capacity is crippled. On December 29, they signal willingness to return to negotiations. Powell Everett Alvarez, hearing the intensity of B-52 strikes around Hanoi, realizes the war's end approaches. We knew they couldn't last long. On the 12th of February 1973, after 3,113 days in captivity, Alvarez boards a C-141 for the flight home. When the Paris Peace Accords are signed the 27th of January 1973, the final tally stuns even those who lived through the war. 761 F-4 and RF-4 Phantoms lost 12% of all Phantoms ever produced. Of the 193 USAF F-4S lost over North Vietnam, anti-aircraft artillery claims 13067%, SAMs claim 3016%, and MiGs claim 3317%. The Vietnamese claim 1,046 aircraft destroyed by SAMs. The US acknowledges 205, the truth likely lies between. But everyone agrees. AAA, not missiles or MiGs, was the primary killer of American aircraft. Total USAF losses exceed 2,254 fixed-wing aircraft, 1,737 inches combat, from 1,962 to 1,973. Losses occur almost daily throughout the war. The F-105 Thunder Chief suffers 40% attrition, 334 combat losses from 833 produced, 23 fall to MiGs, 31 to SAMs, the rest to the ever-present AAA. The human cost defies statistics. 591 Americans dead or missing from F-4 losses alone. Hundreds more endure years in North Vietnamese prisons. The psychological toll on those who served and those who waited at home cannot be calculated. The statistical arc of the war reveals both failure and adaptation. During Operation Rolling Thunder, 1,965 to 1,968, overall kill ratios plummet to 2 to 3 to 1 kill ratio, with periods approaching 1. 1 kill ratio performance worse than any previous American air war. The Air Force achieves only 4 to 1 kill ratio, 107.5 kills versus 33 losses to MiGs. Then comes the transformation. Top Gun-trained Navy pilots achieved 13 to 1 kill ratios during linebacker operations in 1972. The Air Force, implementing lessons learned and fielding better weapons and tactics, reaches 15 to 1 kill ratio in the final 5 months of combat. That's a 15-fold improvement over the darkest days of 1,968. What changed? Nearly everything. Top Gun 1969 and later Red Flag 1975 provide realistic adversary training that prepares pilots for the chaos of actual combat. The statistic is stark. Survival rates increase dramatically after 10 combat missions. Red Flag provides those 10 missions in a safe environment, giving pilots the experience they need before facing real threats. The painful lessons of Rolling Thunder yield better strike package, coordination, improved escort positioning, unpredictable routing, and systematic use of chaff corridors and electronic countermeasures. While Weasel tactics evolve from suicide missions to sophisticated SAM suppression, F-4 pilots learn to exploit their aircraft's speed and acceleration advantages rather than trying to turn fight with more agile MiGs. The F-4E's internal gun finally gives crews a reliable close-range weapon. The AIM-7E2 dogfight Sparrow achieves 30% success rates during Linebacker II, triple the early war performance. Navy AIM-9G/H Sidewinders reach 46% hit rates, a revelation after years of single-digit performance. The AN/ALQ-131 ECM pod provides sophisticated electronic protection, countering the SATWO threat that terrorized earlier crews. Weapons employment. Pilots learn proper launch parameters, understanding when to fire and when to maneuver for better position. The ripple fire technique, salvoing multiple missiles at a single target, improves hit probability, even with unreliable weapons. Most critically, air crews learn that technology alone doesn't win fights, it's the tactical employment that matters. The North Vietnamese produced 16 aces compared to America's 5. A fact that speaks to both operational tempo and tactical sophistication. Nguyen Van Coc's 9 confirmed kills, 7 aircraft, 2 drones make him the war's top ace. 13 of 16 Vietnamese aces flew MiG-21 seconds, demonstrating the aircraft's effectiveness in skilled hands. Post-war analysis reveals the Vietnamese as highly professional airmen executing sophisticated tactics under unified command. We learned a lot of lessons and studied many famous dogfights from World War II. Nguyen Van Bay explains, whoever fires first wins. The most important thing was to discover the enemy first, to gain higher speed and height, to get better position. Their hit-and-run tactics, attacking only under favorable conditions, evading when outmatched, proved perfect for their strategic situation. They didn't need to win air superiority. They merely needed to make American air operations costly enough to undermine political will. In that objective, they succeeded. Vietnamese SAM crews demonstrated equal professionalism. Lieutenant General Nguyen Van Viet, who launched 89 SA-2 missiles during the war and claims 21 aircraft destroyed, explains the innovation that countered American jamming. We would keep our radars on until an inbound warplane was about 25 miles away. We would then turn off the radar, calculating the aircraft's speed, distance, and last plotted direction, until the aircraft was little more than a mile away, then turn on the guidance radar and attack. This tactical discipline operating radars in receive-only mode, manually tracking targets, activating guidance radars only at the last instant, required extraordinary skill and coordination. When combined with the track-on-jam technique that turned American jamming signals into homing beacons, It transformed supposedly obsolete SA-2s into lethal weapons. The Vietnamese also demonstrated remarkable resilience. When one system failed, others compensated. When SATWOs proved ineffective due to jamming, AAA and MiGs took up the slack. When American tactics evolved, Vietnamese tactics adapted. The integrated air defense network proved greater than the sum of its parts. In September 2017, San Diego hosts a reunion between Vietnamese MiG pilots and American aviators. 13 Vietnamese pilots, 3 retired lieutenant generals among them meet with 25 to 30 American veterans. The atmosphere mixes tension and warmth, pain and healing. Jack fingers inch. An F-4 pilot shot down the 25th of August 1972 shows his mangled hand tortured without painkillers. His thumb lopped off by Vietnamese interrogators to Senior Colonel Wim Van Lam. One of the 2 MiG-17 pilots Ench shot down on the 23rd of May 1972. Lam clutches Ench's scarred hand and apologizes for what his countrymen did. The smallest jail cell in the world is right between your ears, Ench explains. If you continue to hate, they're half a world away. They don't know that you are thinking about hating them or anything like that. They go on with their lives. If you still do that, you're still in jail. We're friends now. Nguyen Van Bay, the legendary MiG-17 ace, sits with American F-4 pilots who tried to kill him 5 decades earlier. We're friends now. Bay says, American pilots were ordered there, sent there to defend their country. If we didn't shoot them, they'd shoot us. We were doing our jobs. That's the past. The reunions demonstrate what combat veterans on both sides understand. They were professionals doing impossible jobs in an impossible war. The Vietnamese respect American courage and technology. The Americans respect Vietnamese skill and determination. The bitterness, at least among those who fought, has faded into something more complex. Mutual recognition of shared experience. Vietnam's air war revolutionized American air combat training and doctrine. Every fighter pilot who graduates from Top Gun, every crew that flies through red flag simulated threats, every F-15, F-16, F-22, and F-35 designed with internal guns and emphasis on maneuverability owes a debt to the painful lessons of Vietnam. The F-4 Phantom itself becomes perhaps the most successful fighter of its generation, precisely because it evolved to correct its deficiencies. The F-4E with internal gun, the improved F-4G Wild Weasel, the Navy F-4J and F-4S with upgraded electronics, each iteration addresses lessons written in blood over Southeast Asian skies. The Phantom serves with distinction in Israeli hands, shooting down over 100 Arab aircraft. It remains in service with some air forces into the 21st century, testament to a fundamentally sound design improved by combat experience. The technological lessons prove equally enduring. Modern air-to-air missiles achieve 70–80% hit rates, numbers that would seem fantastical to pilots firing unreliable sparrows over Hanoi. But that reliability came through evolutionary development driven by Vietnam's failures. The AIM-120 AMRAAM and AIM-9X Sidewinder incorporate decades of refinement, making the beyond visual range doctrine actually work. Electronic warfare capabilities expanded exponentially post-Vietnam. Modern fighter aircraft carry integrated ECM systems, radar warning receivers, and countermeasures that would astound 1,960 seconds era crews. The Wild Weasel mission evolved into the specialized F-4G and later F-16CJ, then into 5th-generation fighters with stealth characteristics and sophisticated sensor fusion that locate and destroy surface-to-air threats from standoff range. Perhaps most importantly, the military learned that technology alone cannot substitute for rigorous, realistic training. Red flag exercises continue at Nellis and Eielson Air Force bases, having flown over 423,000 sorties and trained 165,000 aircrew over 50 years. Top Gun evolved into the Naval Strike and Air Warfare Center, institutionalizing the lessons Patterson and his fellow instructors learned in that trailer at Miramar. Colonel Robin Olds, reflecting on his Vietnam experience, offered wisdom that resonates across decades. The most important thing is to have a flexible approach. The truth is, no one knows exactly what air fighting will be like in the future. We can't say anything will stay as it is, but we also can't be certain the future will conform to particular theories, which so often, between the wars, have proved wrong. Steve Ritchie, America's only Air Force pilot ace, puts it more simply when discussing the massive effort to rescue Roger Locker. We come to fully understand the effort to which we will go, the resources we will commit, the risks that we will take to rescue one crew member, one American, one ally. Isn't it a very powerful statement about what kind of people we are? Joe Kreka, tortured for 6 years in the Hanoi Hilton, demonstrates that statement's truth when he meets President Nixon after release. Thank you, Mr. President, for bringing us home with honor. And I'm really sorry about the F-4, but I promise if you just give me another one, I'll take much better care of it. The F-4 Phantom never expected Vietnamese pilots, SAM operators, and anti-aircraft gunners to inflict such devastation. 761 Phantoms lost, hundreds of airmen killed or captured, years of pain and adaptation. But from that crucible emerged an air combat capability that learned from failure, adapted to threats, and transformed defeat into future victory. The Vietnamese proved worthy adversaries, professional, skilled, innovative, and brave. They studied their enemy, exploited weaknesses, and fought with sophistication that shattered American assumptions. 16 Vietnamese aces emerged from the war, their tactical brilliance earning grudging American respect. But the Americans also proved adaptable. From the worst kill ratios in history, they evolved to 15-to-1 performance through better training, improved technology, and tactical innovation. The price was steep paid in aircraft, lives, and years of captivity, but the lessons endured, shaping air combat doctrine for generations. When Nguyen Van Bay and American F-4 pilots shared drinks at the 2017 reunion, both sides understand what they accomplished. They survived one of history's most intense air wars, learned from each other, even as they tried to kill each other, and emerged with mutual respect. The F-4 Phantom entered Vietnam as a symbol of American technological invincibility. It left as a symbol of hard-won adaptation proof that even the most powerful military must learn, evolve, and respect capable enemies. That lesson, written in the skies over North Vietnam, from 1965 to 1973, remains the war's most enduring legacy.